Hi, this is the Shawn1113 podcast show. I am your host, Shawn1113, as usual. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast, wherever you may be, whatever platform you're listening to, iHeartRadio, Apple Cast, Amazon Music, Podcast Republic, Podcast Addict, Spotify creators, we originated from, Pandora, TuneIn, many, Castbox, and many Spreaker. I can think of a lot of more platforms, wherever podcast you may be listening to. But thank you so much for listening to the Sean Lemmer 13 podcast show with now over 200 episodes, which episode number 201 on its way right now. Now, before we get to the NCAA basketball tournament and all kinds of stuff, I do want to express my condolences to two boxers. A lot of people may not have known under the radar, probably older boxing fans, by the name of Livingston Bramble, a former lightweight champion. Um, he was the person that beat Ray Boom Boom Man City for the lightweight championship, and then Eric Rosario eventually beat him. But Bramble was a character. His love of snakes and all that other stuff. Not should be mentioned a little bit more in boxing, in the lightweight boxing world, when it was unbelievable at that point. But Mancini, if you get to see Bramble Mancini, when the boxing was 15 rounds, so Bramble shocked Mancini, Boom Boom Mancini in that at that time, and he was the lightweight champion of the world. So R.I.P. Livingston Bramble. Even more, just as much, probably even more so, George Foreman. So I'm going to make a brief statement on that. R.I.P. George Foreman. Um, I'll tell you, as an older boxing fan, I'm 57 years old. Not ashamed to admit my age on that. Um, Foreman had certainly two different, completely different careers. As far as boxing is concerned, he was this mean, nasty. I mean, almost unapproachable boxer. With he always had, not that he always had power. He always was a power puncher, but certainly, personally, the most famous fight at that time was Ali and Foreman in Zaire, Kenya. And two of the most famous fights he's ever had was Ali and Foreman in Zaire. But he was that part of George Foreman was mean and nasty and great power puncher. I mean, look what he did to Joe Frazier. Knocked him down 6 times. My goodness. I mean, see, if you get a chance, see his fights for his first half. The second half, my goodness, the complete opposite. And he became a preacher in Houston before he became even more famous with the George Foreman Grill. Who hasn't at least heard or had at one time or still have the George Foreman Grill? I mean, his entire life was an absolute redemption story that this should be told by everybody for as an example, really and truly. As an entrepreneur, and then there to go in the boxing world in its mid 40s, and the Michael Moore fight, Foreman just 10th round, unforgettable. I mean, you can't think about that fight when Foreman won the heavyweight championship against Michael Moore without Jim Lampley saying it happened. It happened. And that was incredible. That was like a redemption story. It's like it circled all the way back around. But talk about a redemption story. Talk about a sports legend. a real tale, an entrepreneurial legend. His story will be forever told by everybody. So, as an example of how you can redeem, you can be mean, you can be nasty. You didn't have to. You're not a good. You wasn't the best person in one half, and then completely turn around as a likable, humble human being on the sex. And that to me was George Foreman, in my opinion. And my condolences to his family and like I said before, Livingston Bramble. Now let's get to the other stuff. Baseball, Major League Baseball, coming back in pretty much a few days as of this recording. I can't wait for that. NBA ongoing, you know, NHL, um, pretty much close to the playoffs on both leagues. Um, English Premier League had a week off as of this recording. Liverpool more likely will win the league at this point, barring a collapse. At this point, I'm just hoping Man City can make it into fourth place and get back to the Champions League. At this point, I'll be happy about that, in my opinion. Um, I don't. What else? Well, the NCAA basketball tournament. I do not. I will be the first to admit I do not watch much women's college basketball, but I have definitely heard of Juju Watkins, and I do feel bad for her with her ACL. I just found out about that. She is one of the big college stars of women's basketball, and that is a very bad break for Juju Watkins. Really and truly. Um, wow, ACL. Mm, I don't know what else to say about that. NFL draft upcoming in April. A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. Like I said, the NBA, NHL playoffs will be incoming. So a lot of great things going on, will be going on as we get into April. Like I said, and the Masters as well, golf tournament. Let's don't forget that. And like I said, April may be the best time of the year for sports, and WrestleMania for WWE fans out there. So with that, couple more things here. Thank you so much for 200 episodes again. If you didn't listen to it already, the 200 episode of that as well. So I want to thank you in advance for that. For that. Now let's go to the NCAA basketball tournament, the Switch 16, Elite 8, and my Final Four. Thankfully, is still intact. Florida, Alabama, Houston, and Michigan State. So, needless to say, I'm going to pick. That's my picks. I will put the link in the description of how everything goes about on my YouTube video as well, so you can see it for yourself. But I got a lot of things, a lot of excitement. Like I said, it's been an ordinary term with the dominance of the SEC. That's how 7 of the 14 teams left. That's how dominant SEC is. Yes, in my opinion. So with that, now I've said enough. This is the Shawn1113 podcast show for March 25th, 2025. Thank you. Again, thank you so much for listening to this podcast, wherever platform you're listening to, anywhere and everywhere in the world. Everything will be linked in the description, including that video, that YouTube video that I'm going to link in the description. And with that, thank you for listening to the Shawn1113 podcast show. Please stay encouraged no matter what and live your life as normal as possible in an abnormal world. God bless you.